Welcome to The Dangerous Ones. I'm your host, Jim Drastic of 11 Films. And as always, I'm joined by the award-winning co-founder of 11 Films, Tiffany Drastic.
Hey, everybody.
And executive director of Demcast USA, Nick Knudsen.
What's up, America?
Our guest today is a relentless advocate for environmental justice, veterans' rights, and comprehensive immigration reform, proudly representing California's 49th District. Before arriving in Congress as part of the now infamous Blue Wave of 2018, he built a career as an environmental attorney and clean energy entrepreneur, focusing on sustainable innovation and climate solutions at the grassroots and policy levels. In Congress, he quickly emerged as a powerful voice, championing legislation to protect natural resources, expand healthcare access, and create a fair pathway to citizenship. Beyond policy, he's a fierce defender of democracy, consistently pushing back against extremism and advocating for transparency and accountability in Washington. A leader who knows the stakes and isn't afraid to speak truth to power. Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to welcome to The Dangerous Ones, Congressman Mike Levin. Congressman, hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and we wanted to get your reaction to a story that is dominating headlines right now, and that is that Donald Trump might accept a luxury jet from Qatar as a temporary Air Force One, which would then be gifted to his presidential library before he leaves office. This arrangement feels like bribery, corruption, and a national security nightmare all wrapped up into one fresh hell. What is your take, Congressman?
Well, it's good to be with you all, and thank you for continuing to expose the lawlessness and the recklessness of this administration. It's a flying bribe. That's probably the best description I've heard. I've seen some truly absurd comparisons out there, people trying to compare this to the Statue of Liberty. You know, there's been no congressional involvement whatsoever. And on top of it, even if that plane were accepted, it would take hundreds of millions of dollars to secure it and to retrofit it. And it's also an admission, I think, of failure for, Boeing, which is a company that we want to succeed. We want for this Air Force One program, which started a number of years ago, to be successful. We are going to do everything we can as members of Congress to push back against this wanton corruption. It's outrageous. It's so corrupt, so blatantly, overtly corrupt. I don't think any past president would even have thought of it, much less, had the, as my grandmother would say, the chutzpah to actually do something like this. She would also say mashuga. It's mashuga what he's doing.
And real quick, just a quick follow-up is we're seeing some Republicans come out, questioning this and going against this a little bit. Do you think that they will get on board eventually, or will they continue to do the right thing and push back?
Like on board the plane, you mean?
Possibly, yeah.
Well, they've continuously done the wrong thing in the face of this recklessness and lawlessness, everything from the first administration as well. Don't forget, that was the most corrupt administration in American history until now. This is taking the corruption in an entirely different degree that we've never seen in American history. But I hope that they'll grow at least a little tiny backbone and recognize that this is a major national security threat on top of being insanely corrupt.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, the plane would go to the Trump Presidential Library after his term. Which means, free plane for Donald Trump to fly around in between Mar-a-Lago and maybe he wants to go to Qatar. I don't know. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's laughable. I can't even believe we're having a discussion about this because at the end of the day, it does take away from the fact that my colleagues in the House are trying to take away Medicaid, take away food, and all kinds of other things too. And it's incredibly cynical what they're doing. But I think this constant shock is designed to distract from the awful, awful things they're doing.
Absolutely, and we do want to get to the budget bill for sure, and we will in a second. But while we're on the topic of wanton corruption, this is congressional stock trading is an issue that I know you have opinions on, so we wanted to talk about it. Members of Congress routinely have access to non-public market-moving information through hearings, classified briefings, and your legislative work. Reports and investigations have shown that members of both parties and both sides of the aisle have made trades in companies directly related to their committee work. It sounds like we have an insider trading problem in Congress, and the only law that's currently in effect, called the Stock Act of 2012, carries a whopping $200 penalty.
Come on.
And that's if it's even enforced. So this has got to stop. Like, what say you, sir?
You're absolutely right. And when I first started running for Congress back in 2017, my wife and I divested any individual shares of stock, and we put that all in mutual funds, and we have only mutual funds. And I think at the end of the day, you've got to be at least somewhat confident in your members of Congress that they're not using the position and the material non-public information that you alluded to, Nick, to enrich themselves. This shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be controversial. It's supported by between 80 and 90% of the American people. And I'm actually encouraged in this area, more so than I have been, because Mike Johnson very recently said that he was for this, and that's a really good thing. You've got people across the ideological spectrum. So Hakeem Jeffries and Mike Johnson, that's very key because they don't agree on a whole lot. They agree on this, that we should ban members from trading stock. And then you've got people like Chip Roy on the one hand, and then you've got more moderate Republicans like Brian Fitzpatrick. And then on our side, it really runs the ideological spectrum as well. So the bottom line is that the Stock Act is toothless, ineffective, and what we will know from probably by the time this airs is what members of Congress may have used potentially non-public information around the tariff pause to buy or sell stock. You'll recall that Trump was moving forward with these reciprocal tariffs. He had that big chart that was based on a very flawed and simple mathematical formula that had really no bearing in facts other than the chart that they printed up at Staples the night before. I don't know. But that chart freaked the markets out, and so the markets tanked. And I believe April 2nd was when Trump made the announcement, and then that Thursday and Friday the markets dramatically declined by thousands and thousands of points. And then the following 8th and 9th, the Tuesday and the Wednesday, on the Tuesday night, Trump had dinner with a number of the House Republicans, and circumstantially or anecdotally, we've heard that a pause on the tariffs was discussed, perhaps, at that dinner. And then, of course, the next morning at 9:37 in the morning, Trump posted on Truth Social, "Today is a great time to buy." And then about 1:18 p.m., he then posted again the 90-day pause. So the question is, what did members do either before 9:37 in the morning, in the pre-market, or what did they do between 9:37 and 1:18? And did they have non-public information that led to those trades? This is just the latest example of this sort of thing. If you go back to the beginning of COVID, we were all put in a room in the basement of the Capitol Visitor Center. And we were told by Robert Redfield and by people like Anthony Fauci all this crazy stuff about what was going to happen with regard to COVID. And when I got out of that room, I called my wife and I said, "You got to go to our local Costco and buy toilet paper and Clorox wipes." And she thought I'd lost my mind. But what some of my colleagues did is they didn't call their wife, they called their broker, and they said, "Let's go and sell or short cruise line stock, or let's go buy pharma or other companies that might be developing a vaccine." So they wanted to make a buck. And sadly, it was Republicans and Democrats both that did it. It's wrong. I don't care who does it. It's wrong.
Yeah, that should not, the primary motivation for going to Congress should not be so that you can make a bunch of money on the stock market. So
it drives you crazy, man. You just hear that, it's like, it enrages you when you hear stuff like that.
And thank you for calling out both sides.
And thank you so much. Also,
mostly the other side.
Yeah, totally.
Totally.
Also, some of the big news in D.C. this week is Trump's big, beautiful budget bill that is actually a massive scam, basically to, screw taxpayers and siphon money to billionaires. There's lots of poison pills in there. Can you walk our listeners through what is in that bill and where you come out on it?
Yeah, the bill is a steaming pile of garbage, and it will add massive amounts to our national debt and to deficits, trillions and trillions of dollars. One estimate I saw, 7 trillion. Another estimate, including the interest, had it closer to 9 trillion.
Wow.
So this is over time what it will mean for our long-term fiscal policy in the United States. We currently have a $36 trillion national debt. And we've got to be clear-eyed that we can't allow that to continue to grow in perpetuity. We've got to try to come together, and that means we've got to have revenue and spending as part of the equation. The problem with this Republican bill is the basic bet is we're going to take it out on those most vulnerable in our society. They're going to take it out on the senior who relies on Medicaid for their health care. They're going to take it out on the veteran that relies on SNAP, or the child that relies on SNAP for their nutrition. They're going to take it out on everybody who's least able to fight back for themselves. They're going to take that money and they're going to hand it to billionaire donors like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. It's a disgrace. 13.7 million Americans will be taken off of their health care.
My God.
Millions more will be at risk of losing enough their basic services that provide them with enough food to eat, enough money to be able to pay their rent. It's a disaster. There are other little things in there that are even, secret, but I think they're worth highlighting. There's 12 lines in this big bill, which is a giveaway to the corporate gun lobby. For the first time in 90 years, silencers will not be taxed.
Oh.
And that raises $1.4 billion a year, the tax on silencers. So bad for public safety.
What the fuck?
Exactly. You said it. So that there's all these things in there that nobody knows about. If you are undocumented and you are sending money back to your home country, there's a 5% tax on that. But there's an exception. If you're a citizen, you get a tax credit, you get the money back. So there's all these little things in this bill. Every day we're learning more and more. And, what's interesting is Trump actually came out and said, well, we ought to increase the top marginal rate from 37% to 39.6% for those making over $2.5 million. And I said, that's correct. But we should be taking that revenue that we generate with that, and we ought to be investing in the people who need the help the most, investing in our children, investing in early childhood education, investing in fully funding a lot of the programs out there rather than just giving that money away to big corporations. So honestly, the bill is horrible policy. It's horrible politics, and we're going to make them pay for it.
Wow, I did not know about that silencer provision.
What ridiculousness is that? Come on, that's crazy.
Literally insane.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're
Spread
gonna
the word.
Yeah. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
But I mean, stripping healthcare away from the elderly and from children so that you
SNAP benefits,
but
really?
Yeah,
repealing the silencer tax. It's like, what are we doing?
What are we doing? That brings me to immigration. I wanted to talk to you about Gladys and Nelson Gonzalez. For our listeners, they were a couple who came to America in 1989. So they've been here for over 35 years. They had 3 daughters. They raised their family here. They pay taxes. They don't have criminal history. They are not affiliated with a gang. They've went to every single immigration appointment they have ever had in the entire time that they've been here. And everybody knows that the process is broken. They went in for a routine check in February. And in the entire 35 years, the government has never fucked with them. They're always like, here's an extension. Here's doing everything right. They go in for this routine appointment, and the daughters, they thought everything was fine. The parents go in for a routine appointment, and they got arrested.
Oh, my goodness.
They got put in chains, rounded up, separated.
Oh.
Now this couple who came here for 35 years and raised a family are separated during this process.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to talk to anyone, and they got deported back to Colombia. The only reason they found each other again is because they happened to be on the same flight back.
Oh, my goodness.
So my question is, when you talk to these Republicans who are surprised when after they campaigned on build that wall and mass deportation, how are you not absolutely losing your shit on these people who act surprised?
Yeah.
Well, I have spoken to a couple of my Republican colleagues about the Gonzalez situation specifically. And there's a lot of silence And I think there are those on the MAGA side that say, hey, they ran out of chances and they should have been deported sooner. There are people saying that sort of stuff, but the sad part of it is that the only thing that they really did wrong is they got bad legal advice when they first got to the U.S. They didn't speak English, and they got a lawyer who turned out not to be a lawyer, who then referred them to another lawyer who got disbarred. And so, the reality is that we need a program for people like the Gonzalez family who are contributing positively to our economy and to our society, but who have fallen through the cracks of a very broken system. And, you need border security, but you also need humanity. That's the two elements. You need security and humanity both. We don't want an open border. We want a secure border, but we want for those who are contributing positively, whether it's studying here and wanting to start a business someday, or growing a family here. I think about my own family history, perhaps your family history, and would our grandparents, would they even come to the United States today?
No.
Given the circumstances, given the fear that's being put in everyone's minds out there as a deterrent. So, Gladys and Nelson, constituents of mine, 3 daughters, 1 baby grandson, and I'm going to do everything I can. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to try to get something called the Dignity Act to continue to build momentum. That's a bipartisan immigration reform bill that Veronica Escobar of Texas and Maria Elvira Salazar of Florida have been working on for some time. I just spoke with Veronica about the progress, and we're just going to keep at it. It's not MAGA enough for some people, and of course, it's tough on border security, so some others don't like it for that reason. But we've got to find some common ground, and we've got to solve this because it's just leaving far too many people in a very precarious situation. And why they were prioritized for deportation makes no sense to me whatsoever. You want to go after criminals, you want to go after gang members, you want to go after people who are deserving of that time and attention to get them out. That's one thing. But you start going after people like the Gonzalez family, it makes no sense to me.
What did you say the name of the act was?
It's called the Dignity Act.
Dignity Act. How would that? Sorry, how would that, if it were implemented, have sort of retroactively helped the Gonzalez, a family like the Gonzalez family?
So, Nick, it would create a program called the Dignity Program that would basically say, if you've been here for a requisite period of time, you've paid taxes, you're working, you don't have any significant criminal record, certainly no felonies, and you pay a fine, a back fine, then you can stay. That you're on a path to be able to be a permanent resident and eventually to gain citizenship. And, it's personal. Like on the one side of my family, I brought up my one grandma, my Jewish grandmother. So I have a Jewish dad, and I have a Mexican-American Catholic mom. And my mom's parents came from Mexico when they were, my grandpa was a teenager. My grandma was even younger than that. And, they came seeking an incredible, better future. And that's what happened. They had 4 girls, all of whom graduated from college. 3 of them got advanced degrees. My grandma and grandpa never graduated high school, but they worked their tails off.
Yeah.
They started a small business, and now their youngest grandson, all these years later, is a member of the House of Representatives. Would that even be possible today?
Right.
And if it were up to Donald Trump, the answer is probably not.
Right. Yeah. Real quick, let me just, before we get to the next subject, what about what is going on where he wants to now deport citizens? What is that all about? I mean, I know it's before, I believe, the Supreme Court right now, if I'm not mistaken. What is your take on that, sir?
My take is that I just hope and pray that the Supreme Court does, what they need to do, which is follow the Constitution, follow legal precedent, and stand against this obvious extremism from this president and from this administration. I think, the Stephen Millers of the world are completely off base. I think he's an embarrassment, and I'm hopeful. I never thought that I would, have Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett at the top of my list of people to save the republic, but here we are.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Do you think, when they're talking about suspending habeas corpus, is that Is that like, could they possibly do that? Are we facing?
No.
Okay.
No. I've heard a lot of stupid stuff from Stephen Miller, but that was probably the stupidest.
Okay.
Good,
It's saying a lot. It's a high bar.
Okay, because a lot of people were calling in. They're really scared.
Yeah,
Americans are really scared.
Yeah, they're like, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, maybe I'm being too naively optimistic, but I think that the way that they're using the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is fundamentally wrong. There's no actual invasion. There's no actual, troops coming in from Mexico. That's just not happening. And I think that the Supreme Court will fight back against the extremism coming from the administration. Just the same on birthright citizenship. I expect the administration to side with 250 years of precedent.
Certainly hope so.
Hope so. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, everybody.
Yeah. I'm knocking on this wooden desk right here.
Us as well. We'll do it with you. Yeah.
So on the topic of immigration, this month, just off the coast in your district, there was a tragic incident where human traffickers were attempting to smuggle in 16 people, including multiple children, when the boat capsized. What happened down there, and what can be done to stop these smugglers and keep people safe?
Well, this was a terrible situation. You had what's called a panga boat, so basically a very small, ill-equipped boat, and the smugglers knew that it was going to be a very, bad storm with a lot of poor visibility and a lot of rain, and so their bet was that air and marine operations of Customs and Border Patrol were not going to be in the air. The Coast Guard was not going to be able to monitor the way they normally would, and they were right about that. But with that weather came a great deal of risk for them.
Right.
And tragically, the boat capsized and 3 people are known to be dead. We think there's also a 10-year-old girl who also died, who has not been found. And very sadly, just before the boat capsized, according to the briefing that I received from the Coast Guard and from Air and Marine Operations, the people who were smuggling, they said, take off your life jackets. Reason being is they wanted to reuse those life jackets for their next smuggling operation.
My God.
Had they not done that and had those life jackets stayed on, those folks may have lived. And so, look, I think 2 things can both be true. One is that those smugglers need to be held to the fullest extent of the law. They really do, because we have to do everything we can to try to prevent things like that from happening. But 2 is we also have to acknowledge that when migrants, like the family that passed from India, they were from India, when they turn to a panga boat and a smuggler as their best option to want to come into the United States, something's really screwed up. And so for me, again, security and humanity, it was reflective of the need for us to create a better legal process that actually makes sense, that is orderly, and where if you want to experience the American dream, if you want to make a better life for yourself or for your family and work hard and pay taxes and play by the rules, you ought to be able to do it. You ought to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And, it was clear to me that the pendulum swung too far in one direction under President Biden. Just point of fact, it just did. And now it's swung way too far the other way, where we have this just unbelievable cruelty. So what I have asked, as I'm on the Appropriations Committee, and I've asked as an appropriator for $60 million for the autonomous surveillance that we could use to be able, even in the bad weather, to be able to detect those sort of smuggling boats. And it's something that we do on the land border, and we could do it in the maritime environment as well. And I think it's the right thing to do.
Wow, scary stuff. And
Really.
and we hate to take a huge left turn here, but I know we wanted to touch base on the climate.
Yeah, because I know
Yeah.
you're a big climate advocate, just as we are
Yeah.
here. And when Trump 2.0 came in again, he withdrew us from the Paris Climate Agreement. What effects is Trump's second presidency going to have on the environment?
It's been a disaster so far, a total, complete, unmitigated disaster. And, before coming to Congress, I was an environmental attorney. I worked on a lot of renewable energy projects and different, nonprofit organization and really, really passionately believe that we have to do all we can to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and have solutions that are commensurate with what science demands we do. We've got to reduce emissions. We've got to do it quickly, and we've got to do all we can to preserve our Earth, our environment, our air, our water for future generations. And so, basically, this administration came in. Trump said the quiet part out loud during the campaign. He said to the fossil fuel industry, "Give me $1 billion, and you can do whatever the hell you want." And so they gave him the $1 billion, or close to it. I think they donated something like 600 or 700 million that we know of.
Right.
And so then he put people in there like Chris Wright. And look, Secretary Wright is a very smart guy. And I'm going to try to find any area that I can work with him. I'm going to try to do it. But fundamentally, he does not believe in a renewable energy future as much as he believes in a climate, not a climate change solution, but a climate realism, as he calls it. And what that means is, yes, the climate is changing, but we've also got other big problems. Like we've got to continue the path towards industrialization, and we've got to have all the energy necessary for artificial intelligence and, all the rest. And so we got to generate it however we need to. Coal, oil, natural gas, those are his preferred methods. And oh, by the way, he's a major investor and a major beneficiary of the fracking boom.
Shocker.
So the last thing I'll say is this new tax bill, this steaming pile of garbage, has gutted all of those tax provisions that we got in the Inflation Reduction Act for clean energy, for solar, for wind, for everything. And so it's really sad. We're going to have to figure out, God willing, we're going to take back the House in 2026. We're going to take back the White House in 2028. We're going to have to pick up the pieces and have our own project 2029 and get back on track.
Speaking of taking the House back, in 2018, Tiff and I made our very first video for 11 Films, and people remember it. It was called the Blue Wave Trailer, and basically we were trying to highlight a bunch of people who were running for office because it was an exciting time. It was the blue wave.
We know that we knew that a blue wave needed to come crashing through DC.
It's coming. And a friend of ours said, "You got to add this guy, Mike Levin." Yeah. And we did some research and we looked online and we found this amazing clip of you holding up this book and to what was his name?
Darrell Issa.
Darrell Issa, right. Mm-hmm. And it was like, this is, I sent you a book. It's called Climate Change for Beginners. We laughed so hard. It was such a chef's kiss. And we included you in the video. The video went ultra viral, and that kind of started us off. But more importantly, the Democrats' messaging in 2018 worked. The Democrats' messaging in 2020 worked. The Democrats' messaging in 2024 did not work. And here we are now. Democratic messaging is something we talk a lot about on this show. We had Billy Ray on this show recently, and he spoke about it. And he had a lot of strong medicine.
He did.
And but he's right. And so I was curious from you, what are your thoughts? How should the Democrats message for 2026 and beyond?
Well, Billy's a dear friend. I think we should listen to Billy for one.
Yeah.
Super smart and a great messaging guru. But look, I think it's all about the economy, and it's about the corruption that we're seeing every day from House and Senate Republicans and from this president. We will not be running against Donald Trump in 2028. So I think it can't just be about Donald Trump. It's got to be about the MAGA brand and what that represents. But also, if you go back to the 2024 election, Donald Trump ran on improving the economy, specifically reducing inflation, and on immigration. And on the economy, it's been a disaster so far. You have these tariffs and the uncertainty and the lack of stability. I have Republican business owners in my district who are telling me that they didn't sign up for this. The lack of certainty to be able to do any sort of long-term planning around their businesses, the investments they want to make, has been really damaging. And of course, the actual tariff bills that some of these businesses are having to pay. So I think it's just been a big miss, and we're going to see this summer and maybe into the fall, we're going to see the negative implications of the tariffs. On top of that, the immigration policies, well, it is true that the numbers crossing at the southern border have decreased. It is also true that we've seen a level of cruelty and the mass deportations and family separation in some cases that has been really not what most Americans, I still believe, most Americans do not fundamentally want cruelty. And they want security, but not cruelty. So I think at the end of the day, those are the two things he ran on. The numbers that I've seen recently and all the public polling have him underwater on both the economy and on immigration, and frankly, have him underwater overall. The least popular president at the 100-day mark in history, really overtaking his own record in 2017. So look, at the end of the day, I think we are going to have a strong message. I've got ideas. I know my colleagues do as well. We're all going to get out there. What works in my district isn't necessarily what's going to work in another. We all are going to go pound the pavement, and we're going to have a huge win with not just the message, but with the people power on the ground. When I see people on street corners showing up in January, February, March of the non-election year, when I see my 80-year-old mom who has never protested in her life going out there holding up signs, calling out Elon Musk, calling out Donald Trump, I know something is happening, and ultimately it'll be the grassroots, just as it was in 2018. It'll be the grassroots that helps get us across the finish line and helps us take back the House.
Boy, I couldn't agree more with that.
It's up to us, everybody.
Yeah. And we are going to be a big part of that. We're going to be, I mean, we've already been on the streets so far, and we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a little out of order. I want to ask you really quick before we get to the last question, really fast. Senator Ron Wyden was sitting 5 feet from me, and I asked him this question. I also asked Jake Auchincloss this question. Do you believe, because we get a lot of calls on our hotline about this, do you believe over the next 2 and 4 years that the Social Security dollars, that the check that my dad gets, will those dollars, I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you believe that those dollars will go down, his check will go down anytime over the next 2 and 4 years?
Well, I worry more that, based on what Martin O'Malley has told us, Martin O'Malley ran Social Security Administration for President Biden. And I worry more that those checks are not going to arrive at all because of the number that DOJ has done on the Social Security Administration. As far as a decline in the amount, I don't anticipate that. I think Donald Trump is too smart to allow that to happen. But look, Howard Lutnick, he was out there saying how his mother-in-law wouldn't mind if she didn't get her check. I wonder what his mother-in-law actually thinks of that. I think if I said that about my mother-in-law, she wouldn't be very happy. And I love you very much. If you listen to this, I love you very much.
If my mom lost her check, she'd lose her house.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah, right.
that's how dire it is out there. You know?
This is not a drill. This is life and death for a lot of people. And by the way, so is Medicaid coverage for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And so is nutrition for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So they're screwing around with the most vulnerable people in our societies. They can fund a tax cut for Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and their billionaire donors. It's disgraceful.
And finally, we know you're running short on time. We have one last question we wanted to ask you about your district, because one of the great things is about having folks on is we get to learn about people's districts. Can you tell us a little bit about your district and what are some of the successes and challenges you're having in your district? And also, how has Donald Trump's, the administration's policies affected your district?
Well, I represent the beautiful 49th District of California, San Diego and Orange County, about 50 miles of coastline along the Pacific Ocean. I am biased, but I think we have the most beautiful district in the United States. Starts up in Laguna Niguel and goes all the way down to Del Mar.
Can't argue.
it has some challenges. Paradise comes with some challenges. We have a rail corridor that connects LA and San Diego. It's actually the second busiest in the country behind the Northeast corridor. And it's intermittently shut down because it's literally falling into the Pacific Ocean because of coastal erosion, which is exacerbated by climate change. Tourism is huge in our community, as is biotech, life sciences, clean tech. And of course, we've got just to the south, the University of California at San Diego, and just to the north, the University of California at Irvine. And so we really are a hub for innovation. And right in the middle of the district is Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. So we've got a great military community, our Marines and sailors, and a big veteran population, because when people get stationed in that part of the United States, they say, hey, this is pretty nice. and they want to stay.
Yeah.
As far as the impact, I'm very proud that we've gotten over $1 billion with a B in federal funds into the district in the last 6 years from things like the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act and all the community projects that we funded every year, over $1 billion. I'm thrilled. That's helped every community in our district. And we have a lot more to do in that regard. And the biggest impact, I think, of the Trump presidency, the second Trump presidency, has been a freeze on a lot of funds that are very important to our community. One example is $350 million a year that goes to the National Institutes of Health for medical research. Another is a lot of the hiring freeze at the VA and the impact that has on VA healthcare, because there are so many veterans. But across the board, agency by agency, if you just shut things down, it's going to have a very significant effect on districts all across this country. And don't forget, when they fire federal workers, or when DOJ comes in and tells them you got to take a buyout, whatever it might be, roughly a quarter to a third of all those federal workers are veterans themselves. So you cannot say that you want to stand up for veterans and then fire tens of thousands of them. It's ridiculous, and we've got to put a stop to it.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It truly means a lot to us, and we look forward to fighting alongside you, sir, over the next 2 and 4 years. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks. Let's go get them.
Let's do it.
All right.